Hello and good morning to everyone, especially to Miss Ken. So today we will be explaining about language use in Malaysian primary school on cultural and situational context in English textbook and the SKP. So before we begin, I would like to introduce all of our members here. So the first presenter will be Syafika binti Musa, and the second one is me. I'm Munawwirah binti Ali, and the third one will be Wafiqah binti Azhar. Let's see the overviews first. So the first one will be definitions of cultural and situational context. And the second one is Year 3, examples from the SKP and textbook. Also, language use in Malaysian primary school, because as you can see, that is our main focus here. And the third one will be the same, just it's in Year 4. And the fourth one will be compare and contrast between Year 3 and Year 4. And the last one will be conclusions. So now we can move on to our first presenter, Syafika.
Thank you, Ria, for the introduction. Before we get into anything, we need to know the definitions of cultural and situational context. Cultural context is the traditions, custom, and daily practices of a community that influence on how language is used. On the other hand, situational context refers to circumstances or environment in which communication takes place, influencing how messages are interpreted and understood. Now let's move on to Ria so she can explain about the SKP of Year 3.
Thank you, Syafika. So now we move on to Year 3, examples of the SKP and textbook about cultural, situational context, and language use. So the first one, we focus on cultural context. Culture is often about wisdoms and worldview of the country, and textbooks can be a good source for students to learn and adopt these wisdoms and worldview and develop their cultural awareness and identity. This is said by Margaret Way, 2009. So looking at the page here, it's about the traditional Japanese house. So what is the purpose? The purpose of showing Japanese culture in this textbook is to, as you can see, it's obvious, to teach simple English. The textbook uses the Japanese house to introduce basic vocabulary. This is because Japan is a very well-known place. It is a place that every child knows. But the Japanese version is really clear, visual and interesting differences that are simple to describe in basic English. So the second one is to show a clear example. As I said before, the Japanese house is a strong example because its rules are very different and easy for children to see and understand. And the third one is to start global awareness. It gently introduces the idea that countries have different customs. This helps children later on learn deeper respect and understanding for other cultures. So why do they choose a Japanese house? They use a Japanese house to show culture in a Year 3 English textbook because a house is a perfect, easy to understand example. So the first one is like shoes off. They wear slippers, different rule. Beds on the floor, they make bed on the mats, different furniture. And the third one is one room for everything. This room becomes a bedroom, different use of place. This will not only spark the curious, they also will be interested because they are very different. Because as you can see, in Malaysia, we don't wear slippers that much unless we're going to the toilet or something like that, and we certainly don't make beds on the floor. So I think, in my opinion, the obvious one why they choose a Japanese house is, as I said before, is because Japanese is a really well-known country, and the traditional houses has reached a global popularity. So when they see the Japanese house on the page on the English textbook, they will be like, oh, I know this house. I absolutely know it, and they will be interested to know more about it. Now we move on to language used in primary Malaysian school textbook. So I choose here to teach the children subject-verb agreement. The basic rule is the verb must match its subject. If the subject is singular, one thing or person, the verb often ends in S. If the subject is plural, more than one, the verb does not end in S. Easy, right? So, for example, plural subject plus plural verb, no S. So subject, people. This means many people, so it's plural. Verb, wear. This is a base verb with no S because the subject is plural. So the sentence in the page is people wear slippers. So the second one is singular subject plus verb with S. Subject is this room, this is one room, so it's singular. And the verb is becomes. The base verb is become. We add S because the subject is singular. So the full sentence in the page is this room becomes a bedroom. Thus, how can we link that page with the SKP Year 3? So the skills that I am choosing here is the reading. I take the 3 to 3.2.1, understand the main idea of short simple text. This means the student can answer the question, what is this text mostly about? The textbook page is perfectly designed to teach and assess this skill. How the text helps achieve 3.2.1? It is a short, simple text, as I said. The passage is only 6 sentences long. The sentences are short and use basic vocabulary, making it easy for Year 3 students to manage. And the second one is it has one clear main idea. The entire text describes one central topic, the main idea, the features and customs of a traditional Japanese houses. So, is it appropriate for Year 3? Yes, because it's relatable. Everyone lives in the house, so differences are easy to see and understand. So the second one is it's concrete. The examples are physical objects, slippers, cushions, mats, and clear actions. Never, where, sit on becomes. This makes abstract cultural ideas tangible for a child. Another one is builds early respect for differences. At this age, children start to notice differences. This lesson gently shows them that a different way of living, like having no chairs, is not strange or wrong. It's just another normal way of life. This builds empathy and reduces prejudice from a young age. The second question is, does it connect with a big idea? The answer is yes, because as you can see, it's the fostering meaningful way of learning through the communication that connects. And as I said, in the DSKP Year 3, we ask questions like, what is the text mainly about? And we connect the ideas. So this also creates a meaningful learning and communication that actually connect with the students. And the third question is, in what ways do understanding the nature and use of English deepen the ability to connect across culture and perspectives? The page uses English to teach you about life in a traditional Japanese house. You learn why they take off their shoes, what paper drawers are, and how one room can be a living room, dining room, and bedroom. Now we move on to situational context. The creation of situations can enable students to be closer to their personal real life, resonate and think in the context constructed by the teacher, and ultimately participate in the classroom, learning and applying this language knowledge bonds, achieving the final practical applications and communicative nature of language learning, said by Lee 2024. As you can see the page here. So what is the purpose? The purpose of using the situational context our form is to make the English lesson real and useful for the students. It does this by creating reason to talk. The situation to our form gives a natural response for the characters to ask questions. How many horses? Numbers 10, 15, 20, and questions how many in one place. So why do they use visual aids? To show meaning directly. Instead of just reading the word dog, you see a picture of a dog. This creates a direct link in your brain between the word and the image. You don't need to translate the word into your first language to understand it. And the second one is to support understanding. The picture of the farm shows the situation. You can see Uncle Sam, the children, the animals, and the cheese. This helps you understand the story and the conversation without needing to understand every single word. Language used in primary Malaysian school textbook. Functions and forms. So the first one, ask question with there are interrogative sentences. The goal is teach students the correct word order to ask about what exists in the place. So the grammar rule is how many plus plural noun are there. Example from the text, how many horses are there? So the second one is use the present simple tense for facts and habits. The goal is to teach students how to talk about general truth, facts and routines. So the grammar rule here is subject plus verb add s for he, she or it. So the example from the text is do ducks eat tomatoes? Questions about habits. Or they love them. Fact about what they like. Now we move on to the SKP Year 3 and IT Speaking 2.3.1. Narrate very short basic stories and events. How a student would fulfill this the SKP goal? The teacher will point to the picture and ask, what is happening on the farm? And tell me the story of Craig and Aurora's visit. The student would then create a very short basic story like, this is Greg and Aurora. They are on the farm. They see a duck. Then they see a big brown horse. The horse is eating grass. Next, they will see the sheep. This short narration hits the exact goal of the yellow highlight 2.3.1. The student is using simple sentences to describe an event visiting the farm in sequence, which is the foundation of storytelling. In summary, the SKP standard sets the objective to tell a simple story, and the textbook page provides the content, the characters, setting, visual cues to create that story from. So is it appropriate for year 3? Yes, because simple topic. Well, it is about animals, a topic all children know and find it's fine. And easy words, it uses basic vocabulary, dog, horse, cow that year 3 students are learning. And the one is clear pictures. The photos help explain the words. Students can see a goat, sheep, horse, etc. And the last one is short sentences. The sentences are short and easy to follow for young learners. So does it connect with the big idea? Well, yes, because as you can see, we actually inspire creativity because they want to narrate the basic story, and we also fostering the meaningful learning because we ask them to use their creativity on the story sequence, and we communication that connects. We use communication to actually help them to put the story and ask them questions to make sure they are thinking and inspire their cognitive development. So, the third question is, in what ways do understanding the nature of use of English deepen the ability to connect across culture and perspective? We focus on these dates. So, shared context for communication. The page introduces a farm scenario, Uncle Sam's farm, Daisy the duck. Understanding English allows learners to engage with this context, discuss it, and relate it to their own experiences. What animals are on farms in your culture? This builds common ground. That's all from me. Thank you. Now we move on to Wafiqah binti Azhar, and she will be explaining about year 4.
Thank you. Moving on, I will be presenting about the year 4 DSKP. Suitable examples about cultural and situational topics were taken from the textbook with explanation about the language used. First of all, let's look at the cultural context. According to Noor and Hanita, exploring different cultures helps learners develop greater openness toward global understanding, communicate more effectively with people from diverse backgrounds, and gain deeper insight into their own culture through comparison with other societies. This broadens students' perspectives on the world, helping them realize that cultures are diverse yet interconnected. On the right, I have pasted page 40 from the Year 4 textbook, Get Smart Plus 4. This page contains cultural events such as celebrations. The text given is on this page is about two children sharing their cultural celebration. Lynn discusses about the Lunar New Year and Tom shares about Independence Day, or best known as the 4th of July. So, what is the purpose of showing different cultural celebrations in this textbook? First of all, it is to introduce the idea of celebrations in other countries, so students see and realize that people everywhere mark special days, but in different ways. It builds appreciation of diversity to make the students appreciate the traditions and history of other cultures. Now, you might be asking, but why the Lunar New Year and the 4th of July? Well, it's because both celebrations are clear and lively. For the Lunar New Year, they decorate it with red lanterns and receive money packets. For the 4th of July, there's a barbecue going on as well as cooking burgers. A similarity that I found from both of the texts is that they both use fireworks for the celebrations. So this draws the attention of the students in being interested towards the celebration because, as we all know, fireworks are colorful and children love color. There's also a contrast that I found, that is, the Lunar New Year is an Asian culture while the 4th of July is a Western culture. So it is a subtle way to introduce the difference in cultures. Next, I will be discussing about the language used in primary Malaysian school textbook. First and foremost, it focuses on future tense and be going to. This is the most prominent and repeated grammatical structure in the text. It's used to express intentions and plans for the future. The structure consists of a subject, followed by verbs to be, which are am, is, or are, continued with going to, which is a future form, and ends the formula with a base form of the base verb. I've underlined the examples in the text with red, such as we're going to decorate the house, I'm going to stay up, and my parents are going to give me money. The use of vocabulary in the text also plays a role. It consists of topic-specific nouns like lanterns, fireworks, barbecue, all of which I have highlighted the color yellow. The vocabulary is also cultural specific like ang pao, which is in italic font and explained in the text. Lastly, the use of time phrases. Highlighted in purple, the time phrases describe a period of time or specific point in time. For instance, on New Year's Eve, on New Year's Day, and in the evening. Now, let's take a look at the DSKP, shall we? Question: how does the chosen text reach the requirements of the DSKP? To begin with, the content standard states to understand a variety of linear print. The text is a continuous paragraph-based text that students read from top to bottom. So it is a linear text because the students are required to read the text from beginning till end. Moreover, the focus of the text is to understand specific details on a familiar topic. The text includes celebrations, family gathering, and food, which are all relatable for Year 4 students. It is an accessible text and easy to understand. Other than that, the learning standard requires the students to understand specific information and details of 2 paragraphs. Looking back at page 40, there are 2 paragraphs, one containing information about Lunar New Year, while the other covers about the 4th of July. The outcome of understanding the text is that the students are able to answer questions like how do they decorate or when is Independence Day. So, is it appropriate for Year 4? Yes, because of the familiar topic, easy words like family, dinner, and also provides visual support like the one I have circled at the top part of the page. So, does it connect with the big idea? Definitely. Clear structure, such as 2 short parallel paragraphs, make scanning for details, dates, actions, and decorations easy. The language focus is repeated, like be going to gives a pattern that they can imitate for future plans. So, in what ways do understanding the nature and use of English deepen the ability to connect across culture and perspective? Well, first of all, it's to recognize common value. Through English, they see that food, family, and fireworks link people everywhere. And to compare cultures safely, reading how Lynn and Tom describe their festivals let students see differences and similarities without judgment. So, we have covered the cultural context about the year for the SKP. Now, let's move on to the situational context. According to Wang, using a situational teaching model enhances students' grasp on the material by engaging them in thinking and rational analysis, making them more receptive to new knowledge. So on my right over here, I've already picked a story from page 104 from the Year 4 textbook. So what is the purpose of the story? First of all, it is to model empathy and care, which is the value. The story is a moral lesson stated at the bottom of the page, which I have circled, where it says, look after your friends. It shows children visiting a friend in a hospital, expressing concern and questioning, like, what's the matter? So, why are illustrations used? First of all, it is to support comprehension. The vocabulary, like cuts and bleeding, is concrete but may be new to the students. Pictures immediately show the meaning of these words without needing lengthy explanations or translations. Second, it is to define setting and context. Images would quickly establish the different locations. Moving on, let's look at the language used in primary Malaysian school textbook. First of all, the primary use that I found is that it uses past simple tense, which is used to describe an action or series of actions that were completed in the past. For example, Anna broke her leg. The verb is broke, the base form is break, and the tense is past simple. The second language used I have found is present simple tense, which is used for states and facts. For example, she is in the hospital, so the word she is actually she is, which is a contraction, similar to it's bleeding, which uses it's and is actually it is, which is also a contraction. And the third language use that I found is modal verbs. For example, can we write on it? The modal is can, and the function is to ask for permission. And the second modal verb that I found is we should go to the hospital. So the modal is should, and the function is to give advice or make a recommendation. Now let's take a look at the DSKP. So how did the text reach the DSKP requirements? First of all, the content standard. For the content standard, the command is to act out the story, which requires students to perform for their classmates, which is in a small group. And it follows the content standard because the content standard set to communicate appropriately to a small or large group. In this case, they're communicating to a smaller group. And now let's look at the focus. So, the focus stated in the DSKP is to communicate information, events, and stories clearly to an audience. The focus that I found in the text is to communicate information. For example, it delivers the lines clearly so the audience understands the problems and advice. And most importantly, the learning standard. In the learning standard, it is said that students are able to narrate short, basic stories. And from what I've observed is that the students are able to narrate the story because the vocabulary and grammar consists of very common phrases. For example, what's the matter? And I don't feel well. Moving on to the questions, is it appropriate for year 4? First of all, yes, because it focuses on speaking skills, which allows them to practice pronunciation and fluency in a fun, low-stake way. Second of all, it contains an important value. The value is looking after your friends. It's a crucial social lesson for this age group. It seamlessly integrates character education with language learning, teaching empathy, and caring. So can it help solve a global issue? Absolutely. Why? Personally, I believe that the main focus of the text is about empathy and friendship. Developing empathy within oneself can prevent a person from becoming a bully. According to Hikmat, students who show strong empathy are more likely to step in and defend bullying victims, whereas those with little empathy are more likely to reinforce or support bullying behavior. And third of all, according to the Women's Aid Organization, WAO, through teaching empathy and compassion, modeling respect in everyday life, and guiding students to be mindful, we can nurture a generation that rejects bullying and choose kindness.
Thank you, Wafi. So right now, I am going to talk about the compare and the contrast between Year 3 and Year 4 TSKP use in terms of cultural and situational context. First thing first, we are going to talk about their differences. In terms of text complexity, Year 3 have short text, which is between 5 and 6 sentences, and use basic grammar like subject-verb agreement and present simple tense. For example, people wear slippers. While Year 4 have longer text, which is sometimes they use paragraph and require scanning for specific information. Where they use various grammars like past tense, future tense, and also models. For example, when there's a sentence in the textbook saying, "We are going to decorate the house." Next, we're gonna talk about the difference of the cultural context in each year. First, in year 3, they focus on daily lifestyle differences, like in a Japanese house, they use slippers, mats, and share rooms. This makes the cultures is more visible and easy for children to grasp on. While in year 4, they focus on on celebrations and traditions such as Lunar New Year's and also 4th of July. This way, the students can learn that cultures celebrate differently, and also at the same time, it builds openness to diversity. What about situational context? Well, in year 3, they will use situational context like a familiar practical setting space like a farm. Students will start to practice counting animals and asking questions. For example, they will ask, how many cows are there? While in year 4, they will use it as in social and moral situation based, like visiting a sick friend in a hospital. This way, students can learn empathy language, and somehow they will start to know how to give advice to each other. For example, when students can tell to the other, like, what's the matter? Or you should go to the doctor. So, the TSKP must have their own functions, right? But what is it? In year 3, the purpose in the SKP is to build foundational comprehension skills, which is they can identify the main idea, understanding the simple facts, and using everyday vocabulary. While in year 4, it is to develop higher order skills since they are older. They can scan for details, acting out dialogues, expressing values, and also they can apply language in social interactions, including to use both cultural and situational context. Since this is an English subject, so it must be relating to improving their language use. For year 3 students, they will be focusing on simple and concrete grammar structures. What do I mean by concrete grammar structures? It is the grammar that is tied directly to things that children can see, count, or describe, rather than some abstract idea which is too complicated for them to understand because they are too young. They will learn about subject verb agreement, present simple tense, and basic interrogatives such as how many. For year 4 students, they will learn about expanded grammar, such as future tense, like going to, past tense, like broke, and modals, like should, for giving advice. They are using textbook, which link to the DSKP, and it means that the students will develop new skills. For year 3 students, they will learn on how to connect English to familiar or visible objects like houses or animals. They will learn on how to recognize the main idea and practice a very basic communications. For year 4 students, they will learn on how to use English for social purposes, like when they want to give some empathy, or they want to use in friendship, or even in celebrations. They will practice on narrating, acting, and comparing cultures, which makes learning more abstract and also global. Enough talking about their differences. Now let's move on onto their similarities. First of all, they both follow the DSKP framework, which is content standards and also learning standards. Each year builds progressively on the same skills, which is reading, speaking, and cultural awareness. To break it down, both year 3 and year 4 students share the same foundation because they are guided by the DSKP framework, which emphasizes content and learning standards. In both years, lessons use situational and cultural context to make English meaningful and also relatable. They also integrate values such as respect, empathy, and appreciations of diversity, while relying on visual supports like pictures to aid understanding. Most importantly, both years focus on developing the same core skills, which is reading, speaking, and also cultural awareness, but at different level of complexity, which is suitable for each of the years. This shows a continuous progression in learning. Next, the second similarities between them is that both years use cultural and situational context to make English more meaningful and not just grammar based. What does this mean? It means that both Year 3 and Year 4 students use cultural and situational context to make English learning is more fun rather than focusing only on grammar rules. In Year 3, culture is shown through a simple examples like a Japanese home, while situations come from familiar settings such as farms. In Year 4, culture expands to global celebrations like Lunar New Year and 4th of July, while situations deal with social issues like visiting a sick friend. In both cases, the context helps students to connect language to real life, making English more practical, relatable, and also engaging. The last similarity between these 2 years is that both years avoid teaching grammar as separate rules. Instead, grammar is naturally woven into stories, reading passages, and dialogues so that students learn it in context. It means that both Year 3 and Year 4 do not present grammar as standalone rules. Instead, grammar is introduced naturally through stories, reading texts, and dialogues, allowing students to learn structures in context. This approach makes grammar more meaningful and help learners to see how it is used in real communication instead of just reading text from a textbook. That's all about comparing and contrasting between the 2 years. Before I come onto the conclusion, I still have one essential question that I haven't answered. To answer the essential questions, understanding the nature and use of English deepens our ability to connect across cultures and perspective by showing us both the similarities and the differences in how people live, celebrate, and also communicate. This allows learners to appreciate diversity, respect others' traditions, and express empathy through real life contexts, whether is this cultural or situational. We have come to the end of our presentations today. In conclusion, both Year 3 and Year 4 in the DSKP built these skills step by step, which starting with simple concrete language use and progressing to social, moral, and diverse contexts. This progression ensures that English learning is not only about grammar, but about using language to understand the world and interact meaningfully with others. But what about the big idea? We see how English becomes more than a subject. It becomes tool for building connections, empowering students to share their voices and inspiring them to think creatively as global citizens.